All right, here we go. We have Dan Peña in the building. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, for those that don't know, Dan, who's reportedly worth around $500 million, has run multiple businesses over the years and also helps to coach billionaires and business people.
Correct.
Truly an honor to have you here.
It's my honor. Coming back here where your studio is brought back mostly fond memories, but because I went to school not too far from here. But thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get into your whole backstory. So, you grew up in East Los Angeles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in the barrio?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Peña, that's a Mexican name?
Yes. I'm first generation Mexican American. My mother and my grandmother swam across the Rio Grande River in 1924 illegally and settled in East Los Angeles. So I'm first generation.
Okay, so you grew up in, I guess, the 50s?
Well, the late 40s, 50s, but my formative years were there right near Lincoln High School, the big county hospital, and so that's where I grew up, and I went to kindergarten, grammar school, but then we moved to the Valley. I got expelled from school, not the school district, not the school, the third time, and so my parents moved to the Valley and bought a house they couldn't afford because my mother believed that it was the environment that was making me bad. I was making the environment bad. So I graduated from high school out here in the Valley, not too far from here.
Okay, so when you were still living in East Los Angeles, how bad was it?
Well, people weren't shooting each other. They were gangbangers, but they were hitting you with pipes and chains and bricks. They didn't escalate to automatic weapons until after I was gone from there.
Okay.
But there were some bad guys. I mean, there really were.
Okay, this is before the Mexican mafia and when
correct.
guys started getting organized
Correct.
and becoming big.
Correct.
These big gangs. These were just basically just neighborhoods and streets. Just
Correct.
kind of.
Yeah, it was your street was your neighborhood.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay, you yourself, did you get involved in any of that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm not bragging about this. You asked me, I'm telling you. I've been arrested 5 times that I can remember in jail.
Okay.
Almost all are drunk driving or drinking related. I thought I was, Mike Tyson. This before Mike Tyson. If I had 8 or 10 drinks, all of a sudden I was, I thought I was tough. But I got in a lot of trouble, and in school, the third time that I was expelled from the district, I dropped about a 40 or 50 pound aquarium from the second floor onto my teacher's head. And if he hadn't moved 6 or 8 inches, it would have killed him. And we wouldn't be doing this interview then. I would have gone off to penitentiary, and I dislocated his shoulder, and that's when they asked me to get out of the school district. And so I came to the Valley.
Okay, well, I guess I'm looking, it said that you threatened to kill your teacher?
Correct.
And then you dropped the aquarium?
Correct.
Oh, so you actually tried to follow through on the threat.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So they kicked you out of the whole school district?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And my dad was a high-profile cop, which made it even worse. But when I was in grammar school, in those days, they'd stand me in the corner with a dunce cap. And if I turned around with the dunce cap on, they put me in a closet. And then they'd call my dad or my mother, or both, whoever could get there to pick me up first. And I'd stand in the closet 3, 4, 5 hours, shit myself, piss myself, and wouldn't let me out of the closet. Now just imagine if that was happening in 2019. I'd own the LA City School District.
Right.
Okay.
It'd be a major lawsuit.
Correct, a major lawsuit. And so, but I got in a lot of trouble. And I was rebelling against my hard-ass, tough love father.
Okay, and I guess your dad was a lieutenant commander.
Correct.
He was in World War II and the Korean War.
Correct.
He was also in the CIA?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And I guess he was the lead investigator for Robert F. Kennedy's...
Sirhan case, correct.
The assassination.
That's correct.
Okay.
The theory was, and if you Google my dad's name, Manny Peña, he assassinated or was involved in between 13 and 30 killings. John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Che Guevara, amongst others. and he had retired from the LAPD, and he had gone to with the CIA, and they brought him out of retirement to handle the investigation you just alluded to, Sirhan. And the theory in the newspapers at that time was to cover it up. They brought a spook to cover up what really happened. And so my dad was a high-profile guy.
Okay, what really happened, according to your
Well,
dad?
I mean, he never told me. My wife, until the day he died, would ask him what happened. He says it was one shooter. But if you asked him about the guns on the knoll when John Kennedy got killed,
Okay.
smoky guns on the knolls, he would just chuckle. And he says, one shooter can't make 4 puffs of smoke, which allegedly that's how many puffs of smoke came from the knoll. I had the privilege of knowing John Connally, Governor Connally, who was in the limousine with John Kennedy, got shot, who somehow got shot in the thigh from an angle that was impossible. And we never talked about it, but I'm sure there's something to the conspiracy theory.
Well, I interviewed Michael Franzese,
Yeah.
who's a high-profile, mafia member from the Colombo crime family, and he basically said that the mafia has something to do with it. That you believe that the mafia has something to do with JFK's murder.
Yeah, I believe that firmly because of what I was told, and there's no reason for people to mislead or lie to me. People, as part of that life, that had knowledge. Yeah.
And what did you hear exactly?
From what I was told, it makes sense to me that there was a deal struck with the White House through Joe Kennedy, and it was violated, and people on the street were very upset about it.
Okay, Joe Kennedy was the father,
Yeah.
who was in the bootlegging business, the liquor bootlegging business.
Correct.
So he was already dealing with the mafia already.
Yeah, and at one point in time, they wanted to kill Joe Kennedy because he was either double dealing or not doing right on the street.
And part of the deal was, and that's why John Kennedy won Chicago with such an overwhelming amount of votes. And the saying back in those days, vote early and vote often.
Gotcha. That's how he became president. Stuffing the ballots. Okay.
And he's not the only president that's done that, through the years.
Okay. So you graduate high school and you join the U.S. Army.
I flunked out of university 3 times. Then I joined the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And I joined in when age 20, 1966.
Okay. And what did you learn from being in the military?
I learned that my dad raised me harder. In the military in the 60s, they still hit you, they beat you. They were pretty awful to you. But I didn't think it was so bad because my dad, beat me. My dad believed very strongly in spare the rod, spoil the child. But when I went into the military, I was more prepared for the stern, strict attitude and training than most of the kids. And I went on to be an officer, and it straightened me out. It straightened me out.
Okay. So you left the military, you came back and got your degree.
Correct.
And then you started a company called the Guthrie Group.
Great Western.
Oh, sorry.
Great Western first.
First Great Western.
Okay, Great Western, but
Okay.
$820, and I ultimately took that $820 and took it public, and built it into just shy of $500 million about 25 years ago.
Okay.
And then from there, when I got thrown out as a CEO, then I founded the Guthrie Group.
Okay, so let's talk about Great Western.
Yes.
What exactly was that company?
Great Western initially was a drilling exploration company. So we wildcatted for oil and gas in the United States. And then we got into construction pipeline, then we got into refining, and we were in every facet of the oil business except retail distribution through gas stations. And we were in South America, the United States, and in Great Britain. And I took it public in almost 35 years ago on the London Stock Exchange. And it was a big, huge success. And then we acquired 25, 30 companies with the assistance, as I was talking earlier, about other people and other people's money. I convinced the Japanese government, I convinced the Canadian government, I convinced the US government, I convinced the Kuwaiti government, I convinced the Mexican government to lend me money and or buy shares in the public entity. And we built a fairly large independent oil company.
Okay, so how does a Mexican kid from East LA start an oil company? Because I missed the oil part in between there. You hear high school, the military, college, oil company.
Okay, from college, from college I went to work for a Wall Street firm, which would now be, it used to be Payne Weber, okay? And then I went from Payne Weber to Bear Stearns, and I understood what the leverage of real money is. And as I was told you before we started, there's two big levers in life: other people and other people's money. Not your money, other people's money and other people. And I saw the oil boom that was taking off from Texas, Oklahoma. They founded oil in the North Sea, which saved Mr. Thatcher's government from bankruptcy because of the taxation on the North Sea oil. And I saw meatheads making tens of millions, hundreds of millions, in some cases billions. And with the greatest respect, when I took a shit in the morning, I lost more brains than they've got.
Okay.
And so I went to work for one of our corporate finance clients, a kid from Texas, and I ultimately grew his company 10 or 15 times. And then I left him, and I started Great Western Resources in 1982, and built it up. And because I understood the leverage of other people's money, I didn't save money in a bank account and get my friends, fools, and family to finance me and then possibly lose that money. And I knew how to leverage. Leverage works two ways. It's great on the up, but it's shit on the down. And I hit the cycle almost perfectly. And I made our largest acquisition right when oil had gone from $41 a barrel to $6 a barrel. And I also got in the coal business. I was one of the largest independent coal producers. And anyway, it was quite easy, actually. Then when I got thrown out of Great Western by the shareholders, if you remember, 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Mm-hmm. The Kuwaiti government owned 29.9% of us. They were the large shareholder. And our stock price dropped about 75%. At first, they thought that we weren't going to enter the war and save Kuwait. And then they thought that Saddam Hussein was actually going to take over Kuwait.
Right.
So any of the investments the Kuwaiti government had went down in value. And then after the U.S. and its consortium entered the war and beat up Saddam Hussein pretty easily, they thought that the Kuwaiti government didn't have enough money to rebuild Kuwait. Now, I knew how much money they had. There was going to be no problem. But by this time, somebody had to fall. And so the Al-Sabah family, who still run Kuwait today, decided it was the CEO, me. So I got thrown out. I got thrown out rich. They didn't throw me out poor because I still owned a bunch of stock. And then I tried to figure out what I was going to do. And so I took a half a year, and I discovered the then really at the inception of financial coaching. And I got involved, and I said that I was going to dominate it. That's 26 years ago.
Okay, so when you left Great Western,
Yes, sir.
you were how old?
47.
47 years old. How much were you worth at that point?
The number that's just about what you said, about $450 million.
Okay, so you...
Plus or minus 10 million.
Okay, so you were worth $500 million at 47 years old. Mm-hmm. You were married?
Yep.
Kids?
3 kids.
3 kids. So you were at the 0.00001% of the world at that point.
That's almost exactly right. All those zeros you just said. That's it, right.
What were the most extravagant purchases you were making during that time?
Okay. 3 planes, a yacht.
You own 3 planes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a Citation, which we called an Imajet, because it imitated being a jet, because the birds could fly faster than we could. We had a Lear, and we had a Sabreliner. We had a Rivera yacht, an Italian Rivera yacht. We had 3 penthouses, London, New York, and God, I can't even think of what the third one was now. We had major estates in Palos Verdes, Monte Carlo. We had more money than brains.
Okay.
More money than brains.
So you were just buying up everything you
Oh yeah, I was having a good time. I mean, I used to say, and when I got into financial coaching, and this is why not too many of the guys like me too much. I said, my wife has lost at airports in fur coats than your whole fucking net worth. Which wasn't far from being accurate, because most of the guys, until recently, made all their money in putting asses on seminar seats and selling product.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't made a bunch of money. There's 4 or 5 guys that have some money now. Grant's one of them, as we discussed. Okay, but when they started, they were great salesmen. They were great on the stage, and they sold you at the back of the room. I made the money first, and then came and attempted to show the kids how to do it.
Okay, so you got kicked out of your company.
Correct.
You got left with $500 million. Why did you decide to do financial coaching at that point?
For a couple of reasons. Number one, I first taught university 1 year at my alma mater, which is down the street from here, CSUN. And I found that I did a year contract, honors class for $1. That's what they paid me. But I found it very unfulfilling because I thought the kids were snowflakes in the early 90s. They're He-Man superstars compared to the kids today, in my judgment. And so I went around, and a very good friend of mine, a former Marine pilot, said, Dan, we didn't call it giving back in those days. It wasn't called, why don't you do something to assist somebody? And so the best way I could see is to teach other people how to get rich with none of their own money, and using the leverage as long as it was legal, moral, and ethical. So I did. And when I first started, I grossly underestimated one thing. If I'd known what I know now then, I would have never started coaching. Almost nobody has any self-esteem. Almost nobody has any self-confidence. Almost nobody has any self-worth. And to do what I didn't know that. And the reason why it was so easy for me is I've got big balls, big mouth, and I'm above average intelligence. That's all you need. And I've been asked at Harvard, Oxford, where I've spoken, balls or brains, Mr. Peña? 50-50. In recent years, I now say 90-10. 90 balls, 10% brains.
Yeah, I agree. I always say that anyone could pretty much start the company that I built up. People just don't want to do it.
Correct.
People don't have the guts to actually go and do what I do. But
and make the hard decisions.
Yeah, it's not that I'm smarter than everybody else. It's just that I just decided to do it. Explain to me why someone that has multi-generational wealth and never has to work again and could really put all their money in a low-bearing, interest account and live off 100 lifetimes with the money that you have. Why bother coaching other people at that point?
Okay. Again, one of my good friends, when I was trying to figure out what am I going to do, I'm only 48 years old now, 47, 48. What am I going to do the rest of my life? I used to be an avid golfer. I bought a big estate in Scotland next to St. Andrews, where golf began. And I used to play golf 36 holes a day. I played 72 holes of golf because the sun comes up about 3 because we're so far north, and the sun goes down about 11:30, 12. And I did that for about 9-10 months, and I got golfed out. You can only play so much golf. And so my good friend, the guy I mentioned before, Charles Grubbs, and I sat in a room, and he says, let's reverse engineer how you made all this money. He's an engineer, MBA. And so we spent 4 or 5 days in a conference room. And how did I do it? And so we put it together, and at that time, I thought it was about an 18-hour program. I could show kids how to do it in 18 hours. And we gave the first seminar on May 23rd, 1993. I gave it, there was about 65 or 68 people that paid $1,000 a head for 1 day. The seminar wound up lasting 23 hours with Q&A. And I thought, well, fuck, 60 grand. I cleared probably 55 grand for 1 day for doing something I could do while I was asleep. Sounded like fun. So we have updated the seminar over 26 years to now the kids said, well, I'm not Peña. I don't have Peña's communication skills. I'm not a big guy like Peña. Blah, blah, blah. And so, but now we had to create, in my mind, to make the model viable, proof of concept, I had to get meatheads to make millions. I had to get meatheads to make tens of millions. I had to get meatheads to make fucking billions. And we did. But it took me a lot longer. The first 8 or 10 or 12 years, I struggled, not because I was broke, but I struggled giving away, not giving away, but giving the other person that was on the other side of the audience the confidence to do what I did. And so we've developed the processes, procedures, and systems over the years. And now I have tens of thousands of kids that have done this. I'm the only guy out there that has created millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, and hundreds of billions for other people.
Okay.
We have teenage multimillionaires flying around in jet planes. They came to me with a 15-speed bicycle, their only asset. The largest deal in recorded history, the $500 billion NEOM, the future of the city with Saudi Arabia, my mentee Klaus Kleinfeld's deal. So we've done it from A to Z now. And now, about 10 years ago, I used to sell product like everybody else. Everybody said, you got to sell product, Dan. You got to write a book. And I said, well, I'd never write a book again. But so I said, well, 10 years ago, we're going to give the product. So we went from the most expensive product on the market to zero. All my products free. We don't sell anything, okay? And the only thing I do is I still do the seminars at the castle. We're booked up a year in advance. 4 years ago, I decided I'm going to do 2/3 pro bono charity work, 1/3 so money grubber, okay? So 2/3 of my time is devoted to speaking at universities. I'm speaking at the University of Pennsylvania in a few days, Wharton School, where President Trump went. My wife and I support a lot of charitable foundations, mostly Catholic, but missions in Sri Lanka, South America, India, the Philippines, Bangladesh, and that's what I do 2/3 of my time.
Okay, so for example, if you were to look at your overall process on how you help people improve their companies, if you look at a VladTV, from what you see so far, and you've done some research on me and so forth, how would I improve VladTV to making hundreds of millions or billions of dollars?
Well, it's all about other people.
Okay.
You need other people. I hate the word influencers, but it's a common, everybody knows what that. You need other people that are influencers, not unlike myself, but have bigger followings than I do. Grant's got millions to follow him. You know, I don't have those millions. You need influencers to say that what you do, and now there has to be some social conscience part of it. And I don't believe in that social conscience. I don't believe in saving the world. But if you have a lot of big influencers and there's a social conscience portion of it, people don't mind you making money, as long as they think you're doing it for the good of all, for the good of the sum. And that's what and that's what I told Grant when I was on the show 3 or 4 years ago. I also told him to start a fund, which we did. But you can take advantage of the internet in a good way because you can reach millions instantly. And most of the guys don't understand that. And as I told you before we started, I thought social media was bullshit. I thought it was a joke. Now I don't, but I'm here, right?
Right.
Because I realized that I'm going to touch a bunch of people through when you send this out on the internet. YouTube.
Well, you have 3 kids?
3.
3 kids. And you've said that you're not leaving your kids
Any money.
any money.
No, not.
Have you given them anything up to this point?
Oh yeah, well I put them to school, education.
And once they graduated from school, then what?
Yeah.
Nothing?
Well, occasionally when they as all kids do, get in trouble, we've helped them.
Okay.
One of the saddest days of my life, county jail over here, Los Angeles County Jail, which I was in a few times, unfortunately. One of our 2 sons went to county jail for being drunk and intoxicated and fighting, and they were thrown in the same bloody cell block that I was in 30 years before. It broke my heart. See, kids don't do what you tell them to do. Kids do what they see you do. And our children, our daughter doesn't think this way. Our boys think, well, Dad got in a lot of trouble and was very successful, made a lot of money. So we're going to follow in his footsteps. Get in a lot of trouble. But all the stuff that we've taught our children is exactly the stuff that's free on my website. We have a thing called QLA for Dummies. For the meathead, this is the first thing you do. The second thing you do, the third, fourth, fifth. As I told you again before we started, I had 2 board meetings yesterday where we pretty much made 2 young kids, one 22 and one 37, I think John is, instant millionaires with commercial debt, motivated seller, one in Northern California, one in Southern California, buying healthcare facilities.
Nice. Okay. Now, you don't think about creating multi-generational wealth in terms of having the Peña name continue to grow through your children, and like for example how Trump does it. Like Trump's kids are inheriting his businesses and running parts of his businesses and are going to ultimately inherit all of his money.
No,
you don't care about that.
No, and I think if you asked the president to do would he would do this over again, I think he'd say no, because the president and we have big footprints. And it puts a lot of pressure on kids. And although the president's kids seem to be holding up, my kids seem to be holding up. It's early days. It's early days. Andrew Carnegie and Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich said the best thing that you can leave your children is in the state of poverty for them to make it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up poor. I'm first generation immigrant. You grew up poor. A lot of people, when you look at Bill Gates did not grow up poor, but he became way richer. Compared to how rich he is now, you could say he grew up poor.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with Warren Buffett and so forth. What they've accomplished would
dwarfs
whatever they had. You said something interesting. You said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Correct.
Explain that.
Okay, first of all, self-esteem is built the first 7 or 8 years of life. Who are you around the first 7 or 8 years of life? A mom, maybe a dad, maybe one grandparent, maybe an older sibling, right? What do they know about programming kids to be high performance? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They teach you to love. They may teach you some religion. But if love and religion got the job done, we wouldn't have all the problems we've got. They don't get the job done. So now once you're past 7 or 8, and when a kid's 3 years old, other than to change a diaper, they're pretty happy. They're laughing. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 3 years, 5 years, kids are pretty happy. Then as they get exposed to the educational system and they get exposed to other people other than their immediate family, they change. They change. Some people say the world gets them down, okay? Once you're a teenager and older, you're the average of the 5 or 6 buddies that you hang with. I ask all the universities, I ask all the people that I talk to, would you want your kids to grow up and be like your friends? Almost everybody says no. Would you like your kids to grow up and be like you? Almost everybody says no. Would you like your kids to grow up and be like your parents? Almost everybody says no. Normally they say, fuck no, okay? Now, if they're saying they don't want you to be like them, they don't want their kids to be like their parents, what is that telling you, okay? And show me your friends. I tell kids the easiest way to get clean, not clean from drugs, change your phone number, move to another part of the United States or the world, and start over.
Yeah.
Clean.
Yeah, I did that at 29. At 29 years old, I moved from the Bay Area to New York, started completely fresh.
Yeah. When I came back from the military, I was starting completely fresh.
Yeah, best move I ever made.
Yeah.
My mom said I was running away from responsibility and wasting my life. No one really understood why I did what I did.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you really talk to people, because I have a page called Vlad Stocks, and we talk about, people say, well, where I am, what should I do? Because where I live doesn't have a lot of opportunities. And I said, well, just move then. He goes, oh, well, it's not that easy. Well, it is that easy.
Correct.
You're not a tree.
Yeah.
You could get up and walk over someplace else. But
correct.
What do you think stops people from doing that?
Oh, they lack of self-confidence. They don't want to fail. They don't want to fail. And most people care about what other people think, other people say. It's astonishing to me that on Facebook, a person can get like 20 dislikes or whatever you call it, unlikes on Facebook, and they commit suicide. Are you kidding me? How's that possible? What has happened to the world? I grew up, my dad said, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. It's just the opposite now, okay? And I came from, a lot of people had a lot of bad shit to say, but in those days, you stepped out in the parking lot, whoever was standing after they were done with the discussion, and then you forgot about it. But now they go online, Facebook, or they actually start campaigns on social media to discredit people, and there's haters now, which is another thing that's hard for me to believe. It's not hard for me to believe that the people hate. It's hard for me to believe that anybody cares about the haters, but there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I've always said that internet bullying isn't a real thing. Like, if you really are bothered by it, all you have to do is just leave the internet.
Yeah.
Not log in.
Yeah.
And it's over.
Correct.
I think people want to be engaged in that type of behavior.
They think they're going to maybe change
Yeah.
that type of behavior, and that type of behavior is not going to change.
Well, when you look at, like, how many billionaires have you coached personally? Or billionaires when they actually came to you?
Well, only one billionaire was a billionaire when he came to me.
Okay, how many?
25, 28.
Okay. What do you think is consistent in terms of personality type?
Oh, easy. First of all, 98% of the high performers on the planet have one thing in common. They're introverts. Bill Gates is an introvert. Warren Buffett's an introvert. Elon Musk is an introvert. Blah, blah. Okay. Only 2% are loudmouth alpha males like me. Okay. But both the introverts and the alpha males focus, obsession, like OCD. I mean, laser beam focus.
Yeah.
They would rather. There's a black hip hop guy, I forget his name, that says, unless you want success like you want oxygen in your lungs, and I've been rich and I've been poor, and there's no comparison. I mean, Elon, now he takes it back. He said 15, 18 years ago, I would rather commit seppuku, which is harry-carry, kill myself than be poor and not successful.
Okay. So it's really the laser beam focus.
Correct.
Yeah, I think I remember reading an interview with, it was an article about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And they were having a dinner, and somebody asked both of them what their key to
Correct.
success is, and both of them, like, at the same
Instantly.
time said focus.
Yeah. Bill's mother, there was a long conversation, and she asked, what do you attribute your success to? And both Warren and Bill Jr. Said focus.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people think that they need to start all these different businesses and have all these different income streams when none of them are extremely successful. Like, I remember I had something like 7 or 8 websites at one point, and now I have one, because I just started to notice that my time would get taken away trying
Correct.
to run all these different sites when really one of them was the main money bringer. And I was
Correct.
kind of feeding the others in a way. So I had to just keep throwing stuff away, even though it was profitable and making money. It wasn't as profitable as my main business.
Correct.
So I just kept refocusing and refocusing and refocusing until I have just one business left.
And
But that business does better than all 7.
High performance people focus on the few, not the many.
Yeah.
At least 50% of the people that come to me, I tell them to turn the key and walk away from their business. Shut it down. Don't think about it. Just shut it down, and refocus on all your efforts on one, and that's tough to do. But if you do it, it's easy to stay focused. But the second thing that they have in common, in addition to focus, is they love what they do. They're passionate about what they do. It's tough to work, long hours of something you don't like, they're passionate about what they do. Jack Ma, the Alibaba guy, he has the 996 formula. Come to work at 9, work till 9, 6 days a week. Okay, 80 hours. So that's 70 some odd hours. Jeff at Amazon has a similar formula: 80 hours to keep your job a week, 85 hours to be considered for promotion, 90 hours to get promoted. And that's not instilled by the company, that's instilled by the employees. Because once you get in a high performance environment, people want to be high performance. Nothing gets more than success. And it's like a sports team, it's once they are winners, they want to stay winners.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk, there was a quote by him that said that if you start to work 80 hours, you're going to outpace
Correct.
everyone else. And if you just keep doing that, you will seriously start to outpace all your competition. And I remember when I put that up on the Vlad Stocks page, people were like, "Well, that sounds like a horrible life." I'd rather spend time with my family, and I'd rather enjoy my time. I don't want to be 80 years old and a millionaire, and not have any good memories. And it's like, you're not really getting it.
On my 70th birthday, 4 years ago, my staff put together a chart, which is still on my website. And when you count all the 15 and 18 and 20-hour days, from the beginning of my career to my 70th birthday, I'm really 131.
Okay.
I'm really 131. And I still work, I don't consider it work, 50, 60 hours a week. And I haven't had to work in 35 years. But I don't consider it work. I mean, yesterday I was up early preparing for a board meeting, had one board meeting till 1. I did an interview for a magazine, and then I had another board meeting from 2 till 9. I didn't even consider it work. I enjoy it. But I also enjoy kids, and to me, you're still a kid, kids using knowledge that I have gained over a lifetime and going into hyperspace. Space. Now, there's 3,000 pores in our body. 3,000, or 3 million, excuse me, 3 million. I've been screwed in every one of them twice. There's no way that I haven't been fucked. I mean, seriously. And not in a good way, as they say in Europe. And that's the experience. And that's my system is based upon a dream team of guys that have 20, 25, 30, 35 years experience, all helping the one. So you're leveraging off the experience of the team. And I was using a dream team long before O.J. Simpson came up with a dream team. And it works. And most people that have had any degree of success whatsoever want to help somebody else. They're not as hard to find, these men and women that want to give back.
Well, what do you think was your greatest failures?
Oh, fuck. Oh, not understanding the internet. I thought it was a joke. Okay, some of the things, fortunately, nobody was listening to me in those days that I said about people on the internet never got published. Otherwise, they'd be chasing me for it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I grossly underestimated the lack of self-esteem people have. If I had realized that, I probably could have generated billionaires in the first 5 or 6 or 7 years of my coaching instead of from about the 8th, 9th year on. And the third thing is you got to keep things simple. Keep it simple, stupid. I mean, because I can think complex and I can play multi-dimension chess and stuff like that. The regular guy and gal can't. And so the system is now boiled down, refined to not the best of practices, but the best of best practices based on thousands and thousands of case studies.
Well, you've talked about that, protesting online or, with picket signs and so forth doesn't really do anything. If you really want to make a change, you have to make a lot of money and then put that money to work.
Correct.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. There's college kids, high school kids that go to embassies with placards marching around, save the rainforest, and blah, 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 blah. Okay. That's not going to save one tree. You go out like Bill Gates did and start the Bill Gates Foundation that it manages, I don't know, $70, $80 billion. And they're saving the world. They're going out and finding cures for malaria or whatever. And the rich guys and gals have the connections. They have the money. They have the wherewithal to make things happen. And just marching around and complaining doesn't get much accomplished other than marching around and complaining.
Well, you're also big on telling people to be more selfish.
Correct.
Explain that.
When you were growing up and I was growing up, my parents said, we didn't have much, but share your toys. Share your toys, okay. And so almost from infancy, we're taught to share, and love one another. But most people, by the time they become adults, they're thinking, because they want to be liked, because they want to fit in, they are pleasers, okay? And the high-performance people that you read about aren't pleasers. They may be introverts. They may not be extroverts and alpha males like me, but they're not pleasers. I mean, Bill Gates is not a pleaser, okay? And Bill Gates, if you knew him in business, is selfish. And, the thing that the university students can't grasp, and you go back to Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, the current guys, Elon Musk, Ma from Alibaba, they all have one characteristic, is that they're tough as nails. You can be tough as nails and still be an introvert. They are tough. They know how to make hard decisions. They're not interested in what other people think. I mean, I knew Steve briefly before he got sick, Jobs, and you never could confuse him with the facts. It was his way or the highway. And almost all the high performers that I've had the privilege of being around all over the world, it's their way or the highway.
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot about Steve Jobs. I remember reading his book. He had something called distortion reality field.
Correct.
RDF. And an example of this is he would go to his, to his engineers and say, okay, how long will it take you to make this computer? And they would tell him 1 year. And he'd say, great, I need it in 1 month.
Correct.
And they're like, you're insane. There's absolutely no way. He's like, we need it in 1 month. And by the end of that month, it would be done. He would drive people crazy. He would be a terrorist, how they would describe.
Correct.
People hated him.
Correct.
People would quit. They would go insane. But that computer would be done on spec in a month.
But engineers, computer scientists, it's never ready to take off the assembly line. If it was up to engineers, a car would never get done. That's one of the reasons Elon stays on the assembly line for the cars, because it'd never get done.
Yeah.
And that's because they've been taught to be perfectionists. And you don't have to be a perfectionist to make tens of millions or billions. What you have to be is focused. And I came up with 4 words: just fucking do it. I could have written a book, but it means just pull the trigger. Just pull the trigger, and your mistakes and the things you're going to do wrong will pale in complexion to the successes you'll have.
So how well did you know Steve Jobs?
No, I briefly in the '80s did some work from the Guthrie Group with Steve, but I've seen him pick up a computer and throw it at computer engineers, and which they say was not a daily occurrence, but almost a daily occurrence. I know Steve Ballmer, who would pick up chairs and throw them at people in his office. But now all those guys, well, Steve's gone. Those guys are trying to repaint their legacy because they want the history books to be more kind about them, just like an ex-president. They rewrite history. I'm not interested in that. All I want is to be known as the greatest creator of wealth in the history of the planet, and that's it. Whether I tell audiences, if you like me at the end of my talk, I did something wrong. I fucked up. I mean,
what were some? Aside from Steve Jobs, who were some of the other well-known people that you've actually coached?
Well, I was mentored by Konstantin Gratsos, the CEO of NASA Shipping Lines, who is the great friend for 60 years of Aristotle Onassis. I have been exposed to Ken Langone. I've known for 25 years, who's the founder of Home Depot. I've known, God, I'm embarrassed that he just died, Ross Perot. So I've known Bunker Hunt. I've known Sid and Perry Bass, the billionaires from Texas. So I've known a lot of guys, and they all, Boone Pickens, who's still alive. 35 or 38 years ago, I was in a meeting and I'm trying to make this deal, and he says, Danny, if you want to make a deal bad enough, you'll do a bad deal. And that resonated to this day, because whenever I think I'm pushing too hard on a dead dog, I realize it's a dead dog. I'm not going to breathe life back into it.
Yeah, you mentioned Kenneth Langone.
Yes, sir.
I just saw a 60 Minutes special on him. Well, it was really about NYU Medical School.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Langone Medical School.
Yeah, right. And he's the chairman of, I forgot what it's called, but the trustees, who help out. And he was actually the one, he donated $150 million of his own money and then raised another $350 million. And NYU is the first medical school that's actually tuition free moving forward. He helped put together $500 million so every medical student at NYU does not have to pay anything.
And coincidentally, tonight I'm having dinner with a mentee of Ken Langone's, a guy named Robert Donato. And when they were going to NYU together and they were poor, they used to borrow 25-cent pieces from each other so they could get home on the subway back in the late 60s when they were going to school there. But Ken's a great guy. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer because most people who go to medical school don't go and practice in poor neighborhoods or do general medicine because they're trying to pay back
the debt,
$2, $3, $500,000 worth of debt, and they're not going to do that pursuing their passion of helping people.
Yeah.
As well as most minorities don't actually go to medical school because they feel they can't afford it and so forth and so forth. So this is like changing the whole playing field of how it's working. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Ken's a great guy.
Right, and you said Boone Pickens?
Boone Pickens.
Yeah, another titan.
T. Boone Pickens.
T. Boone Pickens. That's one of the major stock investors of all time.
Oh, yeah. He believed in gas over oil way before it was fashionable. And I was drilling with Bunker Hunt 25,000-foot test wells in Oklahoma. And 25,000 is pretty deep for onshore. And we drilled one dry hole, and I had 5% of the well, each well. And these are $20 million pops. So I'm having to come up with 5% of $20 million each time. Drill one dry hole, 2 dry holes, 3 dry holes, 4 dry holes. I'm about ready to go bankrupt. And they decide, well, this must not be a gas play. And they close it down. And it took me 3 or 4 years to pay off the 5% of those wells. They didn't chase me for the money or anything. Danny's good for it. I wasn't good for it. That's the point. But I was part of the group. But when you're in a group like that, and they say, Danny, are you in? Yes, sir. I never said no. It cost me a lot of money sometimes, but I never said no.
Gotcha. Well, there was a situation at the University of Florida.
Oh, yes.
Where a student started to kind of heckle you.
Not kind of. He did.
Okay. You threatened
it's online, yeah.
Yeah, you threatened to break his neck?
Like a pencil.
Okay.
But I didn't touch him. I pulled the microphone out of his hand, and then I looked at all the witnesses, and I said, well, then, I went back to the podium, and then they wanted to throw him out, the people there, and then the security guards came, and I finally ended my talk, or the Q&A part, early. And but the security guards, to their credit, said, if you step out in the lobby, Mr. Peña, that's not school property. You can finish your Q&A out there. And so I did, and I went out there. But the little kid, I'm glad I didn't hit him.
I mean, do you think, with a lot of the people that you seem to look up to, it's the whole tough as nails, by any means necessary, if we have to.
As long as legal, moral, ethical.
Exactly. But when you look at today's environment with the Me Too movement, with the lawsuits and everything else like that, society's become a lot more soft.
Softer, gentler.
Softer and gentler. And a lot of the stuff that you may think, which did work in the past, now is like a headache, lawsuits, and somewhat frowned upon.
Yeah, but it still works.
But it still works.
People ask me, why are you so fucking tough on everybody? Because it still works. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. There's only, you said point, and then you said 5 zeros. It's actually 6 zeros. The sacrifices to become when you've got no money. My system doesn't work if you have money. It's easier. It's a different system. You've got no money. You're dirt poor. You're from Ukraine or from Detroit or wherever the hell. This system still works today. It works today. But it works if you can stay focused. And the way to keep people focused, I'm like the kind of Coach Belichick or Bobby Knight in basketball or Woody Hayes back in football. I choke them, and if you don't want to be choked, don't come and see me. In the 90s, I used to hit kids in the seminar.
Really?
Physically. Smack them around. And now I don't do that. Everybody's got a fucking phone, iPhone. I don't mind, you don't like it, let's go out in the parking lot, asshole. But at my age, too. And so, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it still works. The system bloody still works. As I alluded to before we got on air, the 2 board meetings, I created 2 instant millionaires yesterday. From a 22-year-old kid and a 37-year-old kid. But they worked their butts off. And this was the culmination of that, those board meetings. And there was about 300 years of experience in the board on one of the boards, and about 225 years of experience. They've got no experience, but they're the board members, the accountants, the lawyers, the industry experts. And but it's right. It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, your first book was called Your First 100 Million.
Correct.
What is the key to your first 100 million?
The key, again, it's focus and do what you love. And I loved the oil business back in the day, and forevermore I'm called an oil man. I'm not. I didn't know anything about oil. Of course, now 30 plus years later, I know a lot about oil, and I can smell a good deal or a bad deal. But it's about focus and doing what you love, and it's set out in the system. Now the system, because that book's 10 years old now. Mm-hmm. And I've had 2 editions, but even the second edition is, I think, 10 years old. But it's now all refined on my website for free. And I also have the audio. I updated the book last year on audio, which I would never do again. I read every page and then I go, author's note, and what a pain. I had no idea how much work that would be. But Kat, who interfaced with your guys, convinced me I should do it. If you're not going to write one, you got to do an updated audio. And so now I have an updated audio, and the kids can get it, and the information. It's all bloody free. I enjoy. I didn't realize how much time it was going to free up our office giving away the product and not selling it.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't work, or it didn't come, or got lost in the mail, or blah blah blah.
Well, listen, Dan Peña, at 74 years old, it doesn't look like you're slowing down at all.
That's correct.
I think at this point, people are usually just playing with their grandkids and watching TV.
I have 2 grandchildren, a grandson that was just born about a year ago, and a granddaughter who's 3.5. And but I'm not that kind of person. I love my grandkids, but to sit and bounce them on my knee for any length of time is not me.
I think we should all be so lucky that at 74 years old, still going strong, still doing what you love to do,
Yep.
and still helping other people
Yep.
achieve their dreams. It's the American dream, honestly, is what I see in front of me. So
Thank you.
I definitely appreciate you coming in and
Well,
sharing
it's my
your
pleasure.
wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Until next time.
Okay, it's a wrap,
Peace.
as they say.